Alright, guys, welcome back to the Upward Thinking Podcast. I just want to start out by saying, wow, I am sorry for being, for there not being an episode for a long time. I've just been very lazy, to be honest, and just haven't gotten around to making another episode. So, yeah, I'm sorry about that. But hey, this is going to be a good one, so let's get into it. I want to start off by just talking about the two-party system and just how it's failed us miserably. Because I think while a competition for power is very important, I think that it's very important too that there's always a multitude of viewpoints, because James Madison wrote in Federalist Number 10. The Federalist documents were a group of documents that James Madison, John Jay, a couple other guys wrote, talking about how like a republic was better than a democracy or a monarchy or whatever kind of government that anybody else wanted. And in Federalist Number 10, James Madison talked about a faction or a group that is related to a specific issue or interest, and he argued that majorities can form and become tyranny of the minority. So even in a pure democracy, in a pure democratic society, you have majorities being tyrannical over minority groups, and so that's why it's very important to make sure that, and I think that's why the Electoral College is great, because California has 55 electoral votes, Georgia has 16, but California has way more people than Georgia does. But the reason why the Electoral College is necessary, and so that it's not a just complete free-for-all, is because of states like Wyoming, who have like 900,000 people, and you got them having the same amount of electoral votes as, say, Rhode Island, who has probably a couple million. I'm not sure exactly the number, but they both have 3 electoral votes. And so, although Wyoming has an extremely small population, they're still being represented in federal elections the same amount that one of the other smaller states will be represented. Because if you just let the popular vote count, then pretty much Wyoming's vote, like if every person in Wyoming voted for Donald Trump or for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, Donald Trump still would have won. He won by more than 1 million votes. But because Wyoming has 3 electoral votes, those went to Donald Trump, and that is why he won. He didn't win because of those 3. He won by a bigger majority than that. But though over time those 3 add up, because 900,000 or whatever, like that doesn't really mean that much unless it's a really close race. But those 3 electoral votes can make all the difference. And so it makes sure that those votes in that state are accounted for and actually have meaning. But I saw this picture, this like image, this graphic about like the two-party system and how it's bad. It starts out with there's only one winner and the loser gets nothing. So if, like for instance, right now the Republicans have control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate. So although there are a couple of rules that make that a little bit different, you still have like the filibuster. You have to have 60 votes. You have supermajority necessary things, but mainly the Republicans can do what they want right now. But then you get to strategic voting and the wasted vote theory, and that's kind of like what I was just talking about with Wyoming. If Wyoming voters feel like that their vote doesn't really matter because, like, oh, it's just going to, like, my one vote isn't going to matter when Donald Trump won by 4 million votes or whatever he won by. My one vote, if I don't vote, then it's not going to make a difference. And then you have a million of those people do that, and then you have pretty close races when it really shouldn't be. Then you have voters choose not to support parties they do not view as viable. And I think that's the main reason why we haven't had a viable third party in a long time. And especially not one that has won any electoral votes for sure. But I think this is why, because people who support, like say people who supported Rand Paul or some other libertarian in 2016, a lot of them that probably supported him didn't vote because they're like, well, he's a third party guy, he's not going to win over Trump or Clinton, so there's no point in voting for him. So then you have him getting like 1% of the vote or whatever he ended up getting. And that's when you have third parties collapse because there's no motivation for their voters to go out and vote for them. And then you have lack of voter support discourages formation of minor parties, so then you don't even have those third parties emerge because the founders of, like the potential founders of these third parties are like, well, I mean, you might get like 1 million votes, but you're not going to get any electoral votes, so there's no point in even starting a third party. And then you have fewer parties flourish, so then you're back to the strict two-party system. Existing parties make rules to perpetuate their power, so they implement policies that make their party or the other party the right or wrong party, and there's no in-between. You're either Republican or you're Democrat, and you can't be in between because there's no point in being in between. And then winner takes all rules, and so whoever wins, they get to make the decisions, and they're the only ones that get to make the decisions. It's either Republicans or Democrats. There's no in between. And then you get right back to only one winner. So I really like that graphic because I think it very much it very well explains the failed two-party system that we have. And I've been trying to do some research to find if there's going to be a viable third party in the 2026 midterms or 2028 presidential election. And the only thing that I've found that I think has a chance is the Restorative Party. And the Restorative Party, their bio on their Instagram account says something along, I don't know the exact wording, but it's like something along the lines of it's gone too far to conserve. So basically saying conservatives, like there's nothing left to conserve. We have to restore. And so that's why it's called the Restorative Party. So they're restoring American values. And just a brief overview on their website. Was founded to give a voice to founding stock Americans who have been shamed, silenced, and pushed towards erasure. Far too long, our people have been under attack, and our Christian values have been eroded, and our communities displaced. It's time to stand up and fight back. While we recognize that every individual is unique, we also share collective values, and as a party, we are committed to advocating for those values. Our goal is to restore the American way of life and reestablish a nation that is safe, secure, and prosperous for future generations. Our mission is to return power to the states as our founding fathers intended. The two-party system has failed America, and we must seek a new path to restore it. We are building a new party from the ground up because we believe the Republican Party has abandoned Christ and Christian values. Its leaders pray to false gods at their conventions, elevate immoral figures as speakers, and have failed to conserve anything of lasting importance. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party openly opposes our existence and seeks to replace our values and heritage completely. The Restorative Party exists to stand in that gap, to be a voice for Americans who are being marginalized and erased in their nation their forefathers built. I love this because as a Christian and what I would say a conservative, I believe with everything that just said, because I do believe that America has wandered from the values that we had originally. And I think we need to go back to those because I think the founding fathers got it right. And I do believe the Republican Party has abandoned Christ and Christian values. But I also think, not as important as that, because I think Christ should be the front of anything we do. But I think a little bit less important is the Republican Party, and the Democrat Party too, but the Republican Party has abandoned America. Because, like, you have people who are kind of getting under this, like, umbrella of the America First movement. And I mean, I agree with some of that. I think the main thing I agree with is just what the name is, that it's America First. Like, we shouldn't be giving money to foreign countries, especially countries that hate us, because, like, before Russia attacked Ukraine, we were not friends with Ukraine. Joe Biden and Hunter Biden were friends with Ukraine because they were getting a buttload of money from them. But the United States was not friends with Ukraine. Ukraine's not in NATO. So what obligation do we have to give money to Ukraine? Because last time I checked, Ukraine is not in the United States of America. I mean, like, Hurricane Helene, that was a complete mess. Like, we still have people that have been stuck in North Carolina and other regions that they still have yet to receive any aid from the U.S. government or anybody from the damages that Hurricane Helene caused. And yet we're sending money to Ukraine. Like, I get the thought of helping Ukraine, but you have internal situations that you need to handle first. That should be the most important thing, is the internal situations and like occurrences that you need to take care of in your own country, not in foreign countries. And I think this kind of takes me to my next point with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And now, Marjorie Taylor Greene's my representative, so I'm very familiar with what she's been doing. And I'm not saying that I agree with everything. But what I did agree with is her support for the Epstein files being released. Now, she did help, I believe she helped get the Epstein files, what's it? There's a name, like the Epstein Files Release Act or something. Epstein Files Transparency Act, something like that. But what I don't get is why Trump completely went ballistic on her when she pressured the DOJ to release the Epstein files. Now, I don't really think there will be much to find in the Epstein files, especially based on the phase 1 or whatever they called that first thing, because that didn't show anything. The only thing that showed is information we already knew, but some of it was redacted. So we actually knew more information previously than we did from the release of those phase 1 Epstein files. But I think, I mean, this might just be me, but I don't think you should criticize a congresswoman for wanting transparency in the federal government. Isn't that what the whole point of Congress is? The whole point of Congress is to create legislation, and the executive's role is to enforce it. If the executive is not enforcing the law, then Congress has a right to complain about it. Then it's also the Supreme Court to interpret the law and make sure that it's being enforced correctly. And as far as I know, there hasn't been a Epstein Files Supreme Court case. I think that would be very interesting if that went to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court would rule that the federal government was required to release the Epstein files, that would be an interesting situation. But I don't know. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene criticized the Trump administration over how they handled the Epstein investigation and the Epstein files. But also, she questioned why Trump wasn't releasing them. If he was hiding something about him or his friends, or he was being blackmailed or something. But then Trump responded and called Marjorie Taylor Greene wacky, a lunatic. He called her a traitor. And so, why? I don't get the criticism of her. And now, granted, there's plenty of things to criticize about her. But I don't get the criticism of this specific situation. Marjorie Taylor Greene responded and said that she gave Trump her loyalty for free. And she did announce that, or she said that the feud was about the Epstein files, but Trump said that it was weak polling in an expected primary challenge for why he pulled his endorsement of her. But I can tell you, because she's my representative, the only candidate that I know of right now that has announced that he will be running against her also ran in 2022 and 2024 and did not win, obviously. Or not 2022. Yeah, in 2022 and 2024. I know he was in 2024. I'm not sure if he was in 2022, but I know I know he ran in 2024. And so that's the only other person I know of that is running against her. And he obviously didn't win the first time. And so an expected primary challenge should not cause Trump to withdraw her endorsement. But also, this is kind of breaking news. I'm sure you've probably seen it, but you might not have. That Marjorie Taylor Greene announced that she is resigning from Congress on January 5th. She announced that yesterday, I believe. And, I mean, Trump said that is a... What's the term? Well, Trump also called her a ranting lunatic who has gone far left, and called her Marjorie Traitor Greene, and said that he would support a primary challenger. And he said that he thinks it's great news for the country. And he said that Marjorie Taylor Greene did not give him a heads up before he said that. And he said, nah, it doesn't matter, but I think it's great. I think she should be happy. And I also saw that Trump ignored a, quote, barrage of phone calls from her after he removed his endorsement of her. But Marjorie Taylor Greene said in her resignation speech, or her resignation video, "My self-worth is not defined by a man, but instead by God." And she said, "When the common American people finally realize and understand that the political industrial complex of both parties is ripping this country apart, that not one elected leader like me is able to stop Washington's machine from gradually destroying our country, and instead the reality is that they, common Americans, the people, possess the real power of Washington, then I'll be here by their side to rebuild it." So, that's kind of what I was talking about those third parties. The people realize that they don't have any, they really don't have a choice in the matter. If they choose one side or the other, then I think it'll be an interesting situation to see how the government reacts, because that could be a bad situation for them. And it says the Georgia GOP, Metro Atlanta GOP chair said that a special election in March is likely to replace her seat, chairman of the Paulding County Republican Party. He said they'll still have the regular primaries in May, but from January 5th to the next election, there will not be another representative for that district. Says Governor Kemp could call for a special election earlier than that, but according to Paulding County Republican Party Chair, that looks like it might not be very likely. So, yeah, another thing on Trump, a group of Democrat lawmakers, including Alyssa Slotkin, Mark Kelly, and others, who all have military or intelligence background, made a video saying that, reminding military personnel that they are allowed to refuse illegal orders. But what they failed to mention is that there are no illegal orders that he has been doing. And if there are, they failed to mention one. So Trump responded and said, "This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors. Lock them up." He wrote that on social media on Thursday morning. In another post, he said, "Seditious behavior, punishable by death." The punishment for treason is still the death penalty, but it's unlikely, I would assume, that these lawmakers would ever be charged with treason for just making a video. But it's a pretty bad look when congressmen are telling our military to refuse orders made by the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And like I said, they failed to mention a single order that he made that is illegal. So, the Uniform Code of Military Justice states that service members are required to follow lawful orders but can be prosecuted for following unlawful orders. So, that seems to me that you are required to not follow unlawful orders and can be prosecuted if you do so. And so I think these Democrat lawmakers were technically correct in making their video, but it's a bad look for them to say that the president is giving unlawful orders and not backing that up with any unlawful orders. And a lot of Democrats said that this social media post made by Trump that said seditious behavior punishable by death was a death threat against the Democrat lawmakers. I don't think it was. I think he was just reminding them that seditious behavior and treason is punishable by death under U.S. law. So I think that's a faulty accusation from Democrats saying that he put death threats on them. That was not. I disagree with that. But Lindsey Graham, who is usually very connected to Trump and very agreed with Trump, said that even though he found the video to be despicable, he doesn't agree with the president that they should be put in jail, but he does believe what they did was despicable and they need to explain themselves. And I kind of agree with him. I don't think that they were incorrect in what they said, but I just think it's a bad look for them to not include any evidence in their statement. And I want to finish this episode out by talking about something that I have gotten very, very passionate about in my little several-week hiatus of episodes, and that is the issue of abortion in our country. And I know there's an issue of abortion all over the world, but I want to focus on our country first, and I think we need to do the same thing that people who wanted to abolish slavery did in the 1800s, because this is insane. I would definitely say that abortion is worse than slavery, morally and just statistically, because slavery most slaves were treated horribly, and I get that. But abortion is not even giving these children a chance to live. And I wanted to look up, in the 1860 census, there were approximately 3.9 million slaves. This says shipped to North America during the transatlantic slave trade, there were only about 388,000 of them. And so this says the total number of slaves in the United States over time ranges from anywhere from around 6 to 10 million. Okay? So that's slavery in the United States. In 2024 alone, there were 1.14 million abortions. Since 2000, and there were tons of abortions before 2000 as well, but since 2000, in just the United States, there have been 26 million abortions. So, whereas from around the 1600s to 1865, when the 13th Amendment passed and slavery was abolished in the United States, there were 6 to 10 million slaves, and that does not mean they died. And also, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were treated horribly. Most were, but there were some slave owners who treated their slaves well, and it's very few, but there still were some. But abortions, that's killing them. Every single time there's an abortion, the baby dies. Now there's failed abortions, but the baby is usually left very mutilated or disabled in some way. But that is insane. 26 million abortions just since 2000. And only 12 states in our country have a total abortion ban. And obviously that's since Roe v. Wade was repealed, because that gave the power back to the states to decide what they wanted their abortion law to be. 29 states have abortion bans based on gestational duration. So that's before a certain amount of time you cannot abort the baby. And then 7 states ban abortion at or before 18 weeks, and then 22 states ban abortion at some point after 18 weeks. And I disagree with President Trump on the abortion issue, because he says that rights should go to the states on if they want to ban abortion, and I disagree. I think we should completely ban abortion in every single way, federally, state, local. Every single abortion should be illegal in the United States of America, because that is taking away a human life for absolutely no reason. Most of them. Some of them, they claim to have a reason. It's not a good one, because there is an insane rarity to abortions that are done out of necessity to save the mother's life. Because for most of those situations, then delivery or a C-section is the best way to treat that pregnancy. The only other situation is called an ectopic pregnancy, which just means the baby grows in the fallopian tubes instead of the uterus. And it's going to die anyways because the fallopian tubes are too small and they can't support life or a placenta. So that baby will die. And usually the doctors will treat that by removing the entire fallopian tube. And the baby is already going to die anyways. And those are extremely rare, but they do happen every once in a while. And if the baby is allowed to continue growing, it's going to die because the fallopian tubes will burst, and then the mother will also die because she will bleed out. And so, and those, and like I said, those situations are extremely rare, but I would have to think about that situation if I encountered it. But every single other abortion, and most people don't consider ectopic pregnancy treatment an abortion, and I probably wouldn't either. But every abortion in the United States of America should be banned. No exceptions. There's not a single exception you can give me that would make me change my mind on that. That is taking the life of a living, separate human being. And if you want to comment arguments that you have, I'll be happy to respond to your comments. But you will not change my mind. Abortion is the murdering of an innocent human life, and we need to completely abolish it. So I want to thank you for listening to this episode. We went through several different things, and I encourage you, leave a comment if you have questions, comments, concerns, anything. I'll be happy to read all the comments. You can find all my podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And I have several videos. You can follow me on Instagram. It's Upward Thinking Pod on Instagram. And I'm also on YouTube. My username on YouTube is... Hold on, I don't remember it exactly. I have different usernames for different websites. My YouTube username is Upward Thinking, at Upward Thinking Pod on YouTube. It is Upward Thinking Pod on Instagram. And you can find all of my podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And some of my short form videos are also on YouTube. So I appreciate you guys for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode. God bless everybody.